video. Well, look who it is. It's my favorite Bond, not really, and the man who's most hated Bond to my...
That's not true. Roger Moore exists.
Okay.
Oh, you froze on me, Manning. Uh-oh. Well, never like starting to stream off with someone freezing, huh? This is fun. I don't know. Hello. I was not expecting this to happen. Manning is frozen right now. Because they had a power surge. So we're just going to sit here and chat for a little bit while we just look at Manning's frozen face. So James Bond was created by Ian Fleming back in the 50s after his time serving as a spy during World War II. The character was based off of his cousin, Christopher Lee, who was as well a spy during World War II. Later on, Christopher Lee would appear as one of the villains in the series in the film The Man with the Golden Gun. Although it's surprising, he was never offered the role of James Bond despite being the inspiration for James Bond. But typecasting is a thing, and I believe by that point he had already played Dracula at least once. I think he had played the Mummy as well by that point. So, typecasting in Hollywood, it's great. Sean Connery was the first actor to portray James Bond. Oh, and Manny's back.
Hey, another power surge. Hey, everybody. So I apologize. I have the second power surge that we've had in a row for this, and I profusely apologize. But we are here with the final episode of the James Bond retrospective. Who knows? We may have another episode in the future when they actually have the next James Bond. When we want to talk about all things James Bond, we'll put like a little marker, a pin in it for now. But this is the conclusion of our 6-part James Bond retrospective. And I think from day one, we've kind of understood, we've kind of been building to this in a very small, interesting way. And what I mean by that, Matt, is that...
Has Matt made slight comments about Daniel Craig in every episode?
Has he? The answer is yes. And this is a man, me, who actively got on board with James Bond when Daniel Craig became James Bond, in comparison to Matt, who that is not when he got on board. And there have been some snide comments that have been passed along leading up to this ultimate episode 6 of the James Bond franchise. So Matt, I want to know your overall thoughts on the Daniel Craig, not Daniel Craig, the Daniel Craig movies, and we can get into each film as we go back and forth. But we all know, as someone who really actually, you know what? I'm going to save you first. I'm going to go first and say the positives, and then you can go about and tell me what you don't like.
Presumptuous, but okay.
I mean, I'm presumptuous only because I know you lean more in one camp in comparison to the other, if I'm not mistaken.
Well,
I might be mistaken. Well, anyway, so the the Daniel Craig James Bond films are what really, really, really got me into James Bond as we know today, to where now I can officially say I have seen all the James Bond films, and to a degree, not all of them. Okay, I've not seen like the Casino Royale one. That's like...
You've seen all the official... We talked about this in the first episode. We were only covering the official Bond movies, so you didn't see Casino Royale with Woody Allen. You didn't see Casino Royale with the Jimmy Bond, and you didn't see Never Say Never Again with Connery.
Outside of those, I have seen all the James Bond films, and Craig was the first one I really got on board with. And by that, the reason I wanted to check out the Bond films is because they had been getting critical acclaim. And as someone who kind of watches, I watch kind of like films that are getting a lot of buzz. I watch film as much as I possibly can as a critic now. But then I wanted to try to zoom in on the Daniel Craig films, and I started with Casino Royale. Yes, I had seen the James Bond films beforehand, but Craig was the first one I'd seen all of the films in the lead up to No Time to Die. So I had watched Casino Royale, I had watched Quantum of Solace, I'd watched Skyfall, Spectre, and No Time to Die. And to a degree, I really like all of them. There are some really, well, I don't hate any of them, is what I shall say. There are some that are obviously better than others. Quantum of Solace, to me, I think is a mess, but we'll get into the specifics later. Yes, we'll get into it a lot later. I blame a lot of the writer strikes for that.
Oh yeah, 100. Yeah, we'll get into
100%.
that when we get to that.
Yeah, but overall, I really enjoy what Daniel Craig brought to the role, and what a lot of the directors, Sam Mendes, specifically Skyfall, is such a great film. Overall, Roger Deakins' cinematography is probably some of the most visually striking Bond has ever been. And
I like how Manning's talking about things about the movies before we actually talk about them.
You're right. I apologize.
All things overall, you can say when we talk about Skyfall, but sure, apologies. Go right ahead.
I'm sorry. I'm talking about how excited I am. I like it. It's overall really good. Imperfect series, but overall, it is one that I go back to with a lot of fondness. Matt, what is your overall thoughts of the actual Daniel Craig movies?
So when we started this series, I made it very clear that I was introduced to James Bond pre-Casino Royale. I had already seen, I don't want to say all the movies, because that wasn't true, but I had seen quite a few of them. I had definitely seen all the Brosnan movies, some of the Connery, a few of the Moores, because my dad still loves Roger Moore. And I was already a Bond fan. Daniel Craig, I feel like for a lot of people, was the first time that they either got into James Bond, yes, or it revitalized the love they had for James Bond. And that, because that wasn't me, I always just took his movies as what they were, which were continuations. The problems I have with this series, and we'll get into them, none of them have to do with Daniel Craig as a person or an actor, because he literally was just doing what was asked of him. I know he becomes a producer on the later half of the series. I'm sure when we get into No Time to Die, he definitely had some influence into that film. But for the most part, I don't blame it, nor do I blame any Bond actor. What this essentially comes down to is, look, this is 25 movies split amongst 6 actors, and Daniel Craig's portrayal of this character is just not my cup of tea. Having said that, and we'll get into it, I do think the latter half of his films are really good, and I quite enjoyed them, and we'll get into that. It's his beginning, and I think we should just start talking about the movie. It's Casino Royale, to where I'm not really the biggest fan. But let's just get into it with 2006's Casino Royale.
Yeah. So this is one that is really interesting because, correct me if
I moved out of the way for the poster.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot about the poster.
You think after 6 episodes, Manning would get this.
No, I wouldn't.
There we go.
No, that Casino Royale, I believe the 21st film in the Eon Productions versions of James Bond. And the first, of course, in actually Martin McCampbell comes back, or Martin Campbell comes back.
Reboots Bond a second time.
He does it again. That fiend. He does it once again.
Not really successfully.
And that is where we have opinions galore. This was a film that was highly acclaimed upon its release. This was one that I think has some of the best general consensus reviews for Bond in quite some time.
Still ranks as a lot of people's favorite Bond movie, even all these years later. Because obviously, when you get something like Casino Royale, like the new iteration of something, it's not shocking when people are like, "Oh, well, that's my favorite Bond movie." There's always a recency bias with this stuff. It's no different than a lot of people saying No Way Home is their favorite Spider-Man movie. In 5 years, there are some people who still say that, but I'm sure there are a lot of people who say that now and won't say it later. It's recency bias. We all get it. It's why right now I think Top Gun Maverick is better than the original, but in 2 years, who knows? I might go back to saying Top Gun is better. Yeah. So the thing about this movie is that I find interesting is Martin Campbell rebooting Bond a second time because he did
Yes.
Goldeneye. I find it interesting that when he reboots Bond the first time, there was this sense of Roger Moore got really goofy and Timothy Dalton got
Yes.
really dark. Let's go back to Connery. And I think they pulled that off perfectly. And this time, however, they went, let's not go back to Connery. Let's not go back to Dalton. Let's throw the book out and start over. And that
Yes.
is because of a little movie that came out in 2005 called Batman Begins. I have no. Yes, man.
Wait, I have literally. It's You were right, and I have a quote actually right here.
There is
So
a basis for this.
yeah,
I was literally
exactly.
about to say I have no
Oh,
basis
you
for
were?
this. Okay,
Oh, you
read the
don't?
quote.
There is a basis from this. Paul Haggis,
Good.
who is actually he's a screenwriter and producer for the Best Picture Oscar winners $1 Million Baby and Crash, and he co-wrote the film Flags of Our Fathers, and he co-wrote Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace. So very hit or miss, as we can tell.
Hey, I like one scene in Crash a lot, and I think it's spectacular.
Okay.
And
Well,
Matt Dillon's good throughout the movie, but yeah, no, it's one.
that's another discussion. It's not the podcast for that. But Paul Haggis came in to completely rewrite the climax third act of the film. He explained that, quote, the draft that was there was very faithful to the book, and there was a confession. So the original draft, the character confessed and, spoiler alert, killed herself, and then sent Bond to chase after the villains. Bond chased the villains into the house, blah, blah, blah. I don't know why, but I thought the Vesper had to be in the sinking house, and Bond had to want to kill her and try to save her, blah, 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 whatever. And Haggis also said that he wanted to, quote, do for Bond what Batman Begins did for Batman, end quote. So the screenwriter they brought on, his intention when they came back to actually redo this, he wanted to do this in a way that, he didn't want to, Broccoli and Wilson, in this case, we all know Barbara Broccoli, but in this case, Michael G. Wilson, one of the producers that we've had on the James Bond movies, they realized that Die Another Day had become, quote, fantastical. So they really wanted to take a pivot. And after the success, you are right. The screenwriter literally said that's what they wanted to do, Matt.
Okay, because all this time I've never read that quote. Because the funny thing is for as much love as I have for James Bond, unlike Star Wars or say like Indiana Jones, I've never gotten into much of the production behind the movies. It's always been more just like regurgitated hearsay when I watch like videos about the Bond movies and everything. So I've always just a fan of both series Batman, and I was like, well, yeah, of course. Because Batman, if you're looking at it in the same way, it's like, well, the last century's got, as you said, a little bit too fantastical. Let's ground it. Let's make the character darker, gruffer. So this is the thing. I have heard the great things about this movie for so long. I mean, this is still the only James Bond movie that the Cinephiles podcast with Steve Morris and John Roca have covered. So let me start by saying, before you get angry at me, Bond fans,
I won't.
I'm in the minority. Everything I'm about to say is wrong because that's what the majority say. I do want to say, for this movie in particular, I went out of my way to make sure I gave it my full attention. That meant if I got a text from a family member or something, I paused the movie, responded to the text, went back to the movie. Like, I was not lackadaisically, I paid attention to the movie. And what I came away with is that I think Casino Royale is a fine entry in the series, but I don't see it as the be all end all that so many others do. I think Daniel Craig is good. I was telling Manning off air, comparing the two dark Bonds, Dalton to Craig and Casino Royale, I think in particular, does this thing to where it's like, we need to really tell people how tough this guy is. At the beginning when the parkour scene is happening, let's have him just run through a wall. Let's just show how tough this guy is. as far as Dalton, you just kind of knew he was tough. Just the way he carried himself, the way he did things, you're just like, that's a tough guy. I don't need to see him run through a wall to know how tough he is. There's other things. I think the poker stuff is fine. I think
Sure.
it's good. I do not like how this movie does a fourth act. Look, I know Aliens did it and it popularized this idea of like, let's make him think the movie's over, but then we're gonna keep going. Because I think the whole movie is okay. I think it's good, not great. And again, I think there are moments in this movie that I like. I'll say the whole moment when LaShifra poisons him,
Yeah.
I think is a great moment. I think
Yes.
that's a great moment. I enjoy I mean Judi Dench is still spectacular in this
Without
role.
question.
That goes without saying. I think near the end of the movie, I think I like Daniel Craig's gruffness and the face he puts on, in particular when he's talking to them. He says the bitch is dead. Like I like how it's like he's totally lying. Like that's a
Of
total
course.
mask he's putting on. I enjoy all that stuff. It's just overall, I think it's a good movie. And there's just quite a few Bond movies that I would rewatch before I watch Casino Royale. But I think I will say, in revisiting it this time and giving it my full attention, it has improved for me. And something that has always stayed the same, and I would feel remorse to mention, My Name is still one of the best Bond themes ever. Still one of the best.
Right.
Not
No.
the best, because in two films we're going to talk about what is arguably the greatest Bond theme of all time.
And I would agree. So what I will also add to that is, and I think I want to change the format a little bit than what we've done of going scene from scene to scene. I like having this we're having this very free-flowing discussion because I feel like these films warrant a discussion about who Bond is or who he's not. Especially, we can go through scene, we can talk about some of our favorite aspects. Like, for instance, the opening scene. The opening scene in this, that is a tone setter if I've ever seen it. Love it or hate it, it is a tone setter from what I believe Bond is for Daniel Craig in this new iteration.
It also presents a problem with any series like this and look, the Dark Knight trilogy ran into us whenever you tried to take a fantastical idea, which James Bond is, and you try to ground it. The problem is writers, filmmakers, and again, like I said, Chris Nolan ran into this problem in his series as well, which is you want it to be realistic and serious, but you also want to be able to go, it's also a James Bond movie, because let's be honest here, James Bond chases down this dude into an embassy. Now, for those of you who don't know how embassies work, that's literally like, so I know like for in like Ireland, for example, like there's a US embassy. If I was to go to Ireland and go to the US embassy, I'm on US soil. That's kind of how they work. Like that's how they work everywhere. And that's if you go into Jamaica and you go to the United Kingdom embassy. I picked the wrong one to say United Kingdom because Jamaica is still under the rule, regardless. But it's like their soil.
I see what you're saying.
There's no way that James Bond can forcibly enter that place, assault one of the leaders of said embassy, then murder a citizen of the country of that embassy, and it's kind of just okay. Like, there's no investigation. There's no suspension. Like, it's kind of just like he gets a slap on the wrist from M, and that's kind of it. And I think there's a way around that, which is if you have, because obviously the main crux of this movie is the poker tournament. If you had M when she's reading the riot act to Bond and telling him about this poker thing, if you're like, you're the best, like 00, you're the best poker player that the MI6 has. If that wasn't the case, you'd be suspended. This mission is literally the only reason why, and you're on thin ice. But they don't do that because they want to have the cool action scene and have them do all that shit and look cool. But then, you know, it's also like they blow up like a freaking airplane. And again, nothing, there are serious investigations and things that just like don't get swept under the rug. And again, I know, but like I said, when you want to ground yourself, you run into the problem. That's why I kind of like some of the later movies here, because they kind of step a little away from the realism, and so the spectacular things are allowed to happen.
And I think Casino,
it still is a cool opening sequence.
Yeah, the parkour in and of itself. I guess I was thinking more of the opening sequence, like literally right before.
Oh, you're talking about before the
cold open. Yeah, like well, no, that works too, because I think that's the part, because it's so short. The one at the opening, it's like very it's like
like
5 minutes or something like that. It is quick.
Yeah, it's which is it's how James Bond became a 007.
Which I like little stuff like that, and I think that is a good shower of who Bond is, because he doesn't let Dryden is the guy's name. He doesn't let him finish. He literally cuts him. The spoiler alert.
No, it's cool.
Kills him. You know,
and it does show the ferocity of this Bond right off the bat. It lets you know who this Bond is,
and that's why I think that they are very much aware that is a tone setter for them. And I respect and appreciate the fact that they knew what they were going for and they went for it. And you're right, as the series goes on, you start to see they take a step back from the hyper grittiness that is Casino Royale. And by the time you get to let's say even like Spectre, when they have like a Spectre is probably out of all of them the most like, I guess, the classic James Bond.
We'll get into that when
we'll get into that. But Casino Royale is something that really, it goes the quote unquote hardest out of all of them so far. And I love that cold opening. And as I say that in a way, like, I think they realized that they wanted, and as I've confirmed, they wanted to do something different, and they did it. They did something different with Bond, like it or hate it.
Yeah, no, exactly. And like I said, most people like it, so I'm wrong. So let's talk about Vesper.
Yes,
because I think we need to, because she, as just a character, has a hold over this entire series.
Yes, she does.
I think, unless I'm mistaken, she's mentioned in every one of these movies, except maybe Skyfall. Skyfall might be the only time she's not
Skyfall,
mentioned.
she's not mentioned to my knowledge. She's mentioned in Quantum, she's mentioned in Spectre, and she's also in No Time. I don't remember Skyfall. I could be wrong.
Yeah, but still. And she is oftentimes quoted as being the best Bond girl of all time. I think she's okay.
Oh, come on. Okay, well, when we get into the later, when we get into Spectre, I'm curious into your thoughts as what I think is the second most prominent quote unquote Bond girl of this entire series, moving to Madeline. However, wait, sorry, continue with your thoughts on Vesper first.
Okay, look, Eva Green, she's fucking hot as shit in this movie, and I can't lie. It's that on a look scale, flawless. I like the vulnerability they give her. Like, I love that moment after the fight in the stairwell when she's in the shower crying, because like,
great scene.
It's like they say, like, she worked for the bank. Like, I know as like action movie fans, like, I've seen, between the two of us, we've seen hundreds of millions of people getting murdered in movies, you know?
Yeah.
Like when I watched Lethal Weapon, Mel Gibson's killing dudes left, right, and center. I've never seen someone shot in real life.
No.
You know, like, that messes you up. And I like the fact that they showed that for the Bond. Because again, even if you're just looking at Bond girls are always standing. Like in Thunderball, which is one of my favorite Sean Connery moments, but the moment when he shoots the dude with the spear and makes a quote, like, the chick is just like, oh, look at that. Like, in reality, you'd be like, dude, you just shot a dude with a spear gun and made a quip. What just happened here? And she's good. I think for me, there's something lacking, and I'm not sure if don't want to say it's the performance, because I always just feel like there's something in the writing to where she's supposed to be the ultimate, like, he leaves the MI6 for her.
Yeah.
And there's, to compare her with who I consider to be the best Bond girl, Tracy. Tracy had elements to where I'm like, I can see Bond saying, this is the one forever. Vesper feels more like maybe a step above Natalia in GoldenEye, where it's like, they can have fun together, but I don't see Bond leaving MI6 for this chick.
But I guess I understand what you're saying, and I guess when you go back to that shower scene, in like an old, and I guess not any other James Bond film, but in most traditional James Bond film, it's a shower scene. You know, it would probably end up to them passionately making out, and they'd probably end up in bed together.
Mm-hmm.
But I like this one because they took a different approach where Bond is, yes, he beguiles women in this one, of course, as he always does, but it's not to the extent as like he's a player. He does it for the sake of the mission most of the time. Not all the time, but most of the time. And I really do enjoy the fact that it's just a quiet moment of like, hey, I understand, I'm here.
Oh, it's a wonderful moment.
It's a wonderful
I'm
moment.
not taking anything away from their relationship. I just think that I just don't see what I saw with Tracy in On Her Majesty's Secret Service. You know, like, and that's just my own personal preference, which is we're going to constantly go back to, is it's just personal preference. But again, just talking about that shower scene, it is fantastic. And I like the fact that there's the behind the scenes story that originally it scripted that because it's a James Bond movie that she's like kind of stripped down. But they pretty much, like Martin Campbell and Eva Green and Daniel Craig, they're all like, no, why would she strip down? Like, she's fucked up right now. Like, she's not going to strip. Like, I know it's, you know, and it does, you know, it is a nice moment. Yeah.
And what I'll also add to that is like the trauma that she has gone through. I don't want to call what they have a trauma bond. Trauma bond. Get it? Haha. But what they have is special in the sense of what they have gone through together. Because this is, remember, he's a newly minted MI6 agent, or excuse me, 00 agent. So some of the stuff that he is doing when he's fighting Lashif is like, man, yes, he's ready for it. But at the same time, this is a new Bond that we are seeing, a new James Bond. And chronological aside, don't look at these as all one movie. They're all very much, look at each person as, you know, they're all James Bond in a different iteration. They're not one. It's not a name, as I think some people perceived it as at one point.
It's a code name. No, it's not.
00 is the code name. 007 is the code name, y'all.
Yes.
I like that. And especially when you look at some of the interactions that he has had and the way that he's a lot more ruthless Bond in this one.
Yeah.
And especially in the way that, but that doesn't stop his wit. And you mentioned Lashif. First off, Lashif is a terrifying, Mads Mikkelsen, great actor. I love him. Yes. He is always great. I don't think he is the best Craig villain in my mind.
I agree. I think he's good. Like, again, I think part of what makes the poker stuff good is the two of them. Yes. Which, like, Martin Campbell was given a really difficult task because, like,
again,
poker, like, is not like it's like golf. I feel like it's not that interesting to watch. If you're playing it, it's fun, but like if you're just really standing around watching, and particularly in movies, and I think Martin Campbell did achieve. Like, I like the whole thing of the tell. There's a question of, did Lashif ever have a tell, or did he have a tell and catch on that Bond found his tell and started fucking with him? Like, stuff like that is really cool. Like, I like that. I like how you see Bond learning how earlier in the movie when he's playing poker in Florida, and the
Yep.
guy's girlfriend shows up in the sexy red dress and everything. It's like a distracted thing. He's like, light bulb. That's why he gets Vesper to do it later on for him. You know, like I do like all the poker stuff is really cool. Lashif as a villain though, he's fine. I think man Mickelson did the most he could do. He's no Alex Trevelyan at all.
No, he's not.
You know, he's good. Like I think
he succeeds because Mads Mikkelsen is a great actor, honestly.
I don't want this to come off like it's going to come off. He's serviceable for the film. Like, he's not bad. He does exactly what is required of him for the moment of the season. And because Mads Mikkelsen is such a good actor, he was able to up the role. That in a lesser actor's hands would have been even less serviceable.
Would have been forgettable at the very best.
Like he would have been like the general in Living Daylights. You know, like he's not really that great of a villain.
Is he the oh my goodness, I'm blanking now. Is that the what's his general? The guy from the South, that guy? Yeah. I totally forgot his name, but I remember him just because he was so weird. It was so fun.
But yeah.
Not because he was great, I'll tell you that.
But yeah, no. But yeah, Lashif, you know, I know a lot of people like the fact that like, oh well, this is the first Bond villain that we understand his motivations. I'm just like, I mean, I don't know. I understood Alex Trevelyan's.
I was about to say, yeah, I understood a couple
pretty well. Again, this goes back to not trying to be an elitist fan, but like this goes back to a lot of people. This is their first Bond movie, and because of that, when they go back to the previous ones, they just go, "Oh, those are all just stupid and everything." They don't pay attention to them as much. They kind of just look at them, so they don't pay attention to. Alex Trevelyan literally tells you he's doing this because his parents were murdered by this government and he's pissed off and he wants to screw the government for what they did to him. Yeah, the Chief's good. He's fine.
He is good.
I think ultimately this movie, it is solid. It has Daniel Craig does a good job. Mads Mikkelsen does a good job. Eva Green does a good job. Judi Dench is a fucking saint in this role. The action is pretty good.
I will say the action really, like, especially in that, like, Martin.
I just don't love this movie. That's just me.
Of course, I think Martin Campbell does an amazing job with, especially that the entire act before Vesper's death. When we get into that entire house, that is a well constructed, and it shows he knows exactly what he's doing. Because I was affected when she, spoilers, when she died. I was like, oh wow, because sometimes when Bond girls die in these movies, it's kind of like, oh, I'm so sorry, or like, wow, that was abrupt. This one, I felt something, and even if she may not be in your view, the quintessential Bond girl, I think it was still done. And Martin Campbell, I think, does, whether you think Casino Royale is a better one or GoldenEye is a better one. We know which one you stand for, Matt. But I think that from what we have seen, he is still really good at getting that emotion from the actors while also creating a really dynamic, like, action set piece.
Yeah, no, it's good. Again, and my whole thing is four facts in general. I just don't like. I don't like when it's like, oh, the movies should be over, but we're going to just keep it going for 20 more minutes. There's like two movies that do it that Aliens is like the only one that I think is like really spectacular at it. Poltergeist is the only other one where I'm like, that's a four fact that is freaking great and is there for a reason. Like, obviously this is there for a reason. It's just preference based. And sometimes you're just like, all right, let's wrap this up.
Yeah. And and that's the thing. It's like when she dies and Mr. White escapes, that's when I was like, oh wow, wait, how is this gonna this is the end? Because that's when I know.
Talking about a character like Vesper who just stays in these movies way longer than I thought they would. Freaking Mr. White.
I know, right? Mr. White's in two more after this.
It's just like, why? What? Really?
Also, before we move on to the next movie, Felix Leiter, great job. Jeffrey Wright does a great job. Doesn't really have much to do in this one, but gets more to do later.
He's good.
Yeah, I think he's better.
He's which I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I believe in the book, that's he's there. Felix serves the purpose of two things. He's there to show that the Americans are also tracking Le
Right.
Chiffre, and he has to be the one to restake Bond into the game. Like, that's his sole
Right.
purpose there. And as we talked about throughout the series, Felix's main role is to be like, yeah, so what are the Americans doing as well? Because,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
Britain, even though you broke up with us, you still care. We're your ex that you can't help but drive past her house, huh?
I was about to say, you're turning into King George III from Hamilton now. Suddenly, you'll be back.
What's a
All right.
Hamilton?
What's a Hamilton? Never mind.
All
All
right, let's
right.
move on to this.
This other one. Oh, this Quantum of Solace. So, what is a Quantum of Solace, Matt? Can you tell us what the audience is? What the Quantum of Solace is?
Yeah, it's the worst Bond movie I've ever seen.
Whoa! The worst out of all of
The
them.
worst, yes.
I
And here's
okay.
why.
Okay,
I will
why?
give my reasons for this. To me, and this is my own personal thing, and I went back and forth because I really don't like Live and Let Die. Like, I hated that movie. Go back
Mhm.
to our Roger Moore episode. I hated that movie. And after I watched No Time to Die, I sat for a little bit and I ranked all 25 movies. And I was sitting there going, which do I think is worse? The reason why I put Quantum of Solace is
Okay.
there is not a memorable thing for me in this movie. Can't tell you what the
Nothing.
Bond theme is. Can't tell
Oh.
you the Bond girl. Villain sucks. This movie, and that's to me, I'm like, look, Live and Let Die sucks, but it's got the Paul McCartney theme, and Jane Seymour is at least a memorable Bond girl. So it goes over. Here's my problems with this movie. Well, aside from the unmemorable thing, the villain is terrible.
Yeah,
Craig
he is.
is
I will admit that.
okay. Now, mind you, everything we're about to say, this movie was made during a writer's strike, which, if you don't know about writer's
Yes.
strikes, they don't always turn out good content because obviously major
Where's the
screenplay
writers?
writers aren't working on them. For a movie that is under 2 hours, this thing drags and feels like three.
It really does.
And the action scenes, the hand-to-hand scenes, are some of the worst shot action scenes I've ever seen in a movie. And by this point, this is the 22nd movie in one of the pioneering action series. The one thing you should get right is the action. So that is why, to me, I consider this movie to be the worst Bond movie ever.
And I will even, you know what? I can't say it is the worst. For me, it is definitely the worst out of all the Craig films. Mainly because, and by far, and I say that because even if you just look at the opening and how this begins, the amount of editing, as you can see, as someone who edits so many things, I felt like I was getting dizzy with everything that was going on. And I will say, I will come to this. My favorite thing about this, and this is why I think we'll have the biggest, where we'll differ the most, is I love Craig in every single film. Because he brings, for what he's doing, he is bringing his A game for what he's doing with his Bond. In this one, you can tell he is definitely trying to get over the fact of him and Vesper. This is the one where he is a man who is broken. He is a man with a chip on his shoulder.
That
and
is something about this movie, is the fact that it's the first Bond movie to ever take place immediately after a previous Bond movie. That's never happened in this series before or after. Do we have a Bond movie that takes place? Well, I guess
not immediately, but you know what I mean.
It sets up. It's like an hour after the events of Casino Royale. But I'm sorry for cutting you off. It takes place. When I was on Amazon, or Netflix, I think they said like taking place an hour after the events of Casino Royale.
No, you're right. It does. It says so. I'm looking right now immediately. I didn't realize it was immediately. Wow. Okay. That you're right.
Yeah, it's the Mr. White scene happens where he's like, name's Bond, James Bond. And then he throws them in the back of a car and you get this shit.
I didn't even think about that. Good call. But yeah, this is also it's just, to me, this is easily just, it feels so, no offense to Mark Forster, but like, yeah, this was not his. I do not think that Action is maybe his forte. He's done films in the past such as Monsters Ball, Finding Neverland, Stranger Than Fiction, The Kite Runner, Christopher Robin.
You're telling me
Let's-
this guy did Monsters Ball before this? And
yes.
yeah, action is not his foray, but he's a good director.
Yeah, and that's why I think that some directors need to not do into certain genres. And for some reason, I think this was the genre that it didn't. He's done World War Z, so take that with what you will as well.
I've only seen like the first 15 minutes of that movie, but Brad Pitt's pretty good in it.
And he also did the famous Machine Gun Preacher starring Gerard Butler.
I've never seen that, but just based entirely off of the title and the actor, I'm fucking watching that movie.
There's your watch tonight. Yeah, but like honestly, I think that this is a forgettable film at the end of the day. Is it bad? Yes, it's very bad from a technical aspect. The third act is so boring. Like it's an exploding building. Big whoop. We get that all the time.
And then even the rest of
one
the show, the villain's not super interesting.
I don't remember the villain's name.
It's Quantum.
Of Solace?
Like, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, his name is Quantum.
No, I'm looking it up right now. That's the name of the organization. The main villain is Green. Dominic Green. But he's the leading member of Quantum.
Like, and this is the thing, and I think it comes down to is like, I like the idea of the ending, which is Bond takes him out into the middle of nowhere and is like, taken out of the middle of nowhere. Tons of people are looking to kill you. So good luck getting out of here. In case you want to kill yourself, here's a can of oil. Like, but to me, I'm just like, I don't care about this villain. Like, if that was Alex Trevelyan, that was Sanchez, if that was Blofeld, that'd be a cool, like, badass way for Bond to not kill him, to just be like, I've left you in the middle of nowhere. You got a bunch of people looking for you. See if you can make it back to civilization. You're dead, but here you go. Here's the gun with one bullet in it, or the, you know, metaphorically speaking. So if you want to off yourself, go right ahead. Take care. But because I don't care about this villain, it's just like, I honestly would prefer it if you just shot him.
Yeah, get it over with. Just save us the time.
Dude, Judi Dench isn't really in this movie to make.
She's in the end and the beginning.
I hate this movie, man. I hate it. I don't want to.
I totally get it. It's so bad. I will say the drowning in crude oil scene with Strawberry Fields, I believe is her name. Also, another great Bond girl name.
That was a nice callback to Goldfinger. I did. If there's things we enjoy, I was like, okay, that's a clever. That's if you're a Bond fan, the way she's laying on the bed, you're like, that is Goldfinger.
And that was probably, to me, one of the worst ways to die, being drowning in crude oil. That's like, and that's probably the thing I remember most, is just how horrific that scene really is.
Yeah.
And also Matthias, or Mathis, I keep forgetting. The older gentleman, he's an old ally. He was in Casino Royale. He was in prison, and then he's like, "Hey, let me help you, Bond, to claim my name."
He's a dude from Hannibal. He's the cop in Hannibal.
I didn't know that.
In Italy. Yeah.
That was a really sad death. I will be like, oh man, he was good.
He comes back because they like retcon the ending of Casino Royale to where he's a villain. They retcon it to where it's like, no, that was wrong.
Yeah, they're like, you were a villain. Wasn't. Maybe not.
No, that was
sad.
I think that's just one of those examples to where it's like you just get good actors and they can just like
take
shit and kind of make it bronze. I feel like that was it, to where, you know, I hate this movie.
There's not much to say about this one. Yes, let us talk about.
This movie is so, for me, so far and away superior to the other two entries. I genuinely loved this movie. Woo! Like, genuinely, and I liked Daniel Craig in this movie.
Yes.
I respected the fact that although it's not my preferred thing, the aging, I liked that they brought that in. I thought that was cool. I like the villain. I like pretty much everything about. I love how they, for fans like me, they said, let's bring in some classic things. We get Moneypenny, we get Q. That scene in the museum where they
so great.
What would you like? An exploding pen? We don't do that anymore, Bond.
Cool.
The Aston Martin comes back.
Love it.
Yeah, like this movie is spectacular. And for someone who, like I said, I thought Casino Royale and Reason Visiting was fine. I thought Quantum Solace was the worst movie. To get and I mean this with no hyperbole, one of the best Bond movies. It's spectacular. Like, this movie is spectacular. It felt like to me, for a movie that came out for the 50th anniversary, and I saw this movie in theaters. This is my first Bond movie in theaters, I remember. And at the time, I was a cursory fan of James Bond. So I don't think I appreciated this movie at the time like I
Yeah.
do now, and particularly watching all these movies in order, essentially. Dude, this movie's great. Like, this is just a good. This is like a Bond movie that I'm like, I will go out and buy this on Blu-ray and
Yeah.
own this. This is good, man. This is good.
And this is why I think Sam Mendes, other than being a great, technically too, Skyfall is really technically a step above the prior two films.
Yes.
Not that away from Martin Campbell, he's really good.
No.
But Sam Mendes, honestly, especially with you have Roger Deakins behind the camera to give some of the most
there are
visually
two
stunning
scenes that I still think about, which is when he's the lantern scene when he's getting pulled in, and then him on the roof after M's funeral when he's just standing there with the Union Jack flag. Like, just visually, I'm just like,
this is one of the most visually
fantastic.
Bond. This is one of the most visual Bond films that we've ever had, and I love it for that because they literally. Yeah. You're right, and I do respect it because Skyfall is probably the best mixture, maybe out of all the five, arguably, that we have had between the kind of the
old
legacy of Bond and kind of more the old and the new. Exactly, because it brings back Q, who I think has Ben Whishaw does an excellent interpretation of him. He's fantastic.
It brings back and this is no offense to the actress who played her for the longest time. It has the best Moneypenny.
Yes. Oh, she is. Okay,
Naomi Harris. Am I not mistaken?
Naomi Harris. Yes.
She is so like, and the thing about her that I like is what I like about her is the same thing I like about Q, to where it's like, it's classic but updated. Like, she's and I'm just talking about her in general sense, not just in this movie, because obviously in this movie she starts off in the field and by the end takes a desk job, but just in general, you know what Naomi Harris does? She does what Judi Dench did for him. She makes Moneypenny a character. Because Moneypenny, and we talked about this before, Moneypenny was always just this example of a life, like, James Bond was never going to settle down with Moneypenny and take a desk job. Like, there's no version of Sean Connery becoming M and being with Moneypenny. Like, there's no example of that. And I like the fact that this Moneypenny, she didn't give a shit about dating Bond.
No.
Like, she doesn't. Like, that's no care to her. And this movie, this is one of those things I like talking about. Like, it's good,
I will add before you continue real fast, is that what I really like about also Naomi Harris and the character they have in this interpretation of Moneypenny is that they keep that witty kind of will they, won't they kind of playful banter between her and Bond. Yes. But it's never like consummated in any sort of way. But it's kind of like, it's kind of like playfully hinted at.
Yeah, and I like shaving scene for certain. Is that in space. And I like that, you know what, in classic Bond fashion, they don't just have a Bond girl who's just here to get killed off. Although, if there's one thing, it is pretty messed up a Bond that after he hears that this chick was like a child sex slave, that he's just like, should probably go into the shower and have sex with her now. A bit wrong. bit wrong on Bond's part. But yeah.
Yeah. Good point, man.
But
good point. That is weird.
Like, you get the gadgets are back because there were no gadgets in the previous two, which I love. And let's talk about the villain. Like, Dude, Javier Bardem. Look, we all know Javier Bardem is an incredible actor.
Yes, Anton
But
Chigurh. Whew.
well, I haven't seen that movie, so I
Oh,
can't
he's
speak on that.
scary. He's good.
But he's just this dude's just like an incredible actor, given a great again, like we talked about with Le Chiffre, you like this guy is like Javier Bardem, he is Daniel Craig's Alex Trebek. Alex Trebek. So sorry, sir.
I was about to say,
Alex Trevelyan, to where he's this former agent, and you kind of get he's like,
yeah,
you left me to die. You treated me as you're so. What's so funny is, and I know you talk about, they're not all the same character, and that's certainly true of the Daniel Craig, but like, remember what Judi Dench's M told Pierce Brosnan in GoldenEye? I will send a man out to die. Like, I don't care. Javier Bardem is the example of that. Of like, she left this dude on his own, and he tried to kill himself. He failed, and now he has an understandable vengeance for her because he's again. And I love that we're children. We're orphan children. Like, it's great. Like, yeah, his plan is like the Joker's in Dark Knights, where it's like, how the hell did you actually plan all this out? There's actually really no literal way you could have done this, but I don't care, because there's no way Dr. No could really do what he did, and Dr. No is one of my favorite villains.
No. It is really good.
You know the moment when I knew not only was this one of like I even said out loud to myself, this is a step above the last two. It's the moment when they're cutting between Bond. Can you just give me, I hate just saying the actor's name, Javier Bardem's character's name.
Oh, Silva.
Silva. Bond's chasing down Silva, and they're cutting in between that and M in front of the court. And she starts reading the poetry. I'm like, this is like so freaking well done. And we have Ralph Fiennes, who's fantastic in this movie. And I like the fact that he is this bureaucrat character who's supposed to be crunching down on M and Bonds, but he's like, nah, I think you two got the right idea. I'm gonna cut this red tape for you to get through.
Right.
And I love that moment when Bond slides him the gun in court, and I mean, he takes a bullet for him. Let's not forget.
Of course, yeah.
For him. He leaps over and takes a bullet for her.
And I will also add, you mentioned her, and I will say that her in this case, like Judi Dench, as this is her best. This is her best, obviously, because she has the most to do, of course. Yeah. But this is probably, in my opinion, her best performance as M. Because
I agree.
Obviously, the villain is actually the villain's not really attached to Bond. It's more attached to her and the entire MI6 program.
And Silva, he tries to sort of let Bond know that it's like, she did this to me.
She'll do it to you.
To you too, and then we get to the whole last act of the movie with Skyfall, which is obvious. It's a cool kind of setting. I like the kind of slight reference to Ian Fleming, because of course he had a home named GoldenEye, so it's like, they keep from the Brosnan films the fact that Bond's parents were killed in a climbing accident. Interesting thing. So there's the groundskeeper. Do you know who they wrote that role and wanted to get, but he did not want to do it? Who they wanted to play the groundskeeper?
Was it Connery?
Mr. Sean Connery. Yeah,
okay.
They were in the role and wanted to have, because you gotta remember, this movie is being made and they know it's going to be released during the 50th anniversary. They wanted to have, why do you think it's a Scottish groundskeeper? But by that point,
Uh,
had pretty much his last movie is Leaker Extraordinary Gentleman, but every clever person likes to be like, he did some voice acting roles. He retired. He pretty much fully retired after Leaker Extraordinary Gentleman.
yeah.
Um, so he didn't want to come back. Now, I don't
Wow.
know if that was, again, I haven't read into this. I don't know if that was, I don't want to come back because I'm retired, or I don't want to come back because that's his thing. Because if you hear Pierce Brosnan talk about when Sean Connery met him, and there's even like Roger Moore and Sean Connery were on totally good terms. Like Sean Connery never felt like a guy who was like, "That's my role. You're taking it from me." He always seemed like a guy who was like, "No, that's new Bond." You know, like again, I love the Pierce Brosnan story where he shows up on set and sees Pierce hanging on all the things, and he goes, "I hope they're paying you well for that." So it's a cool thing that they wanted it, especially now. I wish we would have had that. And then the whole ending is fucking unrelenting the best way possible. Like
Yeah.
you think it can't get worse, and then Bond has to blow up his childhood home. And then you think it can't get worse,
Get worse.
Bond falls in the ice. And then you think it can't get worse, and the groundskeeper gets shot. Or no, he doesn't get shot, but like Silva's got him, and it you know, man, it's a good
And
movie.
and then ultimately it leads to M's tragic death, which I really do like that entire scene
Yeah.
because this is the closest to my knowledge that we have seen where someone has come to almost taking down MI6 from within.
Yeah.
Like Alex Trevelyan didn't actually come to London and actually almost take down the entire organization from within.
He didn't get his chance. His whole
No.
intention was to cripple them and then go in for the final blow, where Silver was
Yes.
just like, I'm
One and the
just going
same.
there and blowing it up. You know,
Yeah. And I really do enjoy the fact of what Silva, because we had mentioned also earlier, is that Mendez and Deakins together are a fantastic combination. And especially if you look, there was a scene I'll never forget. Some of this action is phenomenal. The action scene in the entire, like, was it, correct me if I'm wrong, was it Shanghai? If I'm pretty sure
yeah, I
the
think.
city, the entire, like, that entire sequence in Shanghai is
Oh
so
yeah.
visually
The fight's
breathtaking.
great. Again, and you're
Fight's
coming off
great.
of Quantum Assault, which has, like we said, piss poor hand-to-hand fighting scenes.
Yes.
This has some great stuff. And again, I love the
Mhm.
gadgets, so I love that, they set up that this is only for you, and the guy tries to use it, but he can't. And again, I do enjoy the story of Bond having to build himself back up. Like the whole training when he's come back and he's doing all the tests and everything. Like I like
Right.
the I like the whole thing with the gun to where, when he's in the thing, he can't really hit it, when the girl in the glass, he can't hit it. And then he hits Silva at the end. It's great visual storytelling.
Mhm.
Um it's a
Also,
really
I
good
love
movie.
the silhouette. I love the silhouette fight sequences. He and the guy are fighting on the roof on that little
Yeah.
construction site as
Yeah.
they're before about to make the
It's
assassination
it
attempt. Silhouette,
this
so good.
this this is a damn good movie.
It's so good. And I honestly, the BAFTAs had it right when they nominated Judi Dench for supporting actress, and they
Yep.
nominated Javier Bardem for Silva
Yep.
for supporting performances. Well, I
Yep.
don't think they should have won. I think some sort of recognition, including a Best Picture nomination, just to show that hey, a Bond movie can be this highly acclaimed with this amount of great
Yeah,
quality.
and look, that's a discussion for your other
Of
show
course,
of
of course. But like, I
action
think that
movies aren't real movies to,
neither
the
is
Academy.
neither are apparently horror films or animation or any sort of type
No.
of film that's not a prestige drama. But we're slowly maybe eroding that.
Dude,
I'm hopeful.
yeah. I
The younger you allow people to get into that's a whole other discussion. But Skyfall
yeah.
deserved that, and I really think that if anything else, man, this movie is just breathtaking to look at. breathtaking to watch and is probably my favorite. And I think we're in agreement of that one, the best that we've seen out of the 5 that we're gonna get from Craig.
It's good. It's really good.
It is really good. All right, so the next one, Sam Mendes returns to the director's chair to give us not as good, but we got Spectre.
Not as good,
but
I really fucking liked it.
You want to know something real fast?
What?
I know people don't like this as much. I also really like it too.
I know that too. Like, I always remembered that this is a bad movie, and so I kind of went in with that thought process of just like, oh, this is a weak movie. This is blah, blah. I watched it. I'm like, all right, okay, this is maybe a comparison for me. This is like going from GoldenEye to Tomorrow Never Dies. Yeah, I know GoldenEye is like far and away superior, but damn, that's a good follow-up to GoldenEye. Like,
fair,
and look,
fair.
And yes, I like the fact that even more so than Skyfall, this movie felt like they were like, let's do a Connery movie again. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
I'm totally. I mean,
they literally did. Let's see what happens if we take Daniel Craig's Bond and put him in a movie that is like a Connery film, because they definitely lean into a lot of the, obviously Spectre. That's Connery's villain.
Mm-hmm.
Spectre, Blofeld, which we'll see. It is me, James, the author of all your pain.
It is me, James Shea.
Which in a way, this is, which we'll get into another thing. It's really fun because it does something that I feel like the most Bond films haven't done in a while, and is create this overarching villain, this kind of villain that there was someone behind the scenes, and it was Spectre. Yeah. I love that immensely, especially when it's not like a Marvel film where they're all connecting to this one big thing, but there's nice little through lines just kind of connecting for his Bond, not all these other Bonds before, but just his version.
It's a total retcon that they were all working for Spectre. Like, it was
of course it is. Well, I feel like maybe Skyfall. I feel like
because I'm like, when they, I don't know. I feel like
Casino Royale. No, Casino Royale was not working. That was definitely like they were. Yeah, like, okay, what are we doing now?
Again, it's they wanna have them all connect, but I think overall,
like it works though.
It was good. I mean, good action, good story, and. Let's talk about the big thing, which is the Bond girl, Madeline.
Madeline, yes.
I think she's pretty good. Like, I still don't see what Bond sees, but I like the fact that she does challenge Bond. I like the fact that, that her challenging a Bond comes from a far more emotional center, which is like, is this what you want your life to be? And we know from Skyfall already that it's like, I don't know if it is. And I like that it is sort of Bond's story throughout is kind of just questioning, like, is this what I want my life to be? And finally, and in a weird way, doing that story in a Connery kind of movie with Connery's ultimate villain, I think was a smart move because it and you know what? Honestly, at the end, I went, all right. Like, and I love that setup. Damn, Sam Mendes, like visually, I love how
visually great.
Connery. Look at that. Look it out. Look at me. I like how Bond has Blofeld, and I like how there's Emma's over here and Madeline's over there. It's kind of like you have your choice to make with this guy. You can kill him, you can arrest him and give him to M, or you can take him to M and be 007, right, or leave him and let M take care of this. It's a cool thing, and it's ballsy, but comparing to what we'll talk about next, it's a ballsy ending that still works and still fits in because there has been establishments since On Her Majesty's Secret Service that if Bond meets the right girl and feels like it's right, he'll detract from a path that he may never go down. Now, I don't think Madeline is as good as Tracy, but I still think she's really good.
I understand that. I guess my biggest thing with her is that I feel like I like what she represents to Bond, someone who's outside of all this and kind of
Mhm.
like, what is going on? This is kind of ridiculous. She's not in the world of the spy game. She's a psychiatrist,
Yeah.
and she's not like Vesper, who's kind of, Vesper's kind of in this struggle in a way of
But
fighting against.
Madeline comes from this because her
But she walked away
father.
from it,
Yeah, but she
and she's
left
like,
that
I ain't
world.
doing this.
Yeah.
She's like actively like, I don't want to be a part of this. Like, I know what you're doing, don't want it. Stay away. And that is kind of at odds with Bond. I do like that. I wish that we had more time to spend with her from a perspective of just like, and we get more of that in No Time to Die, but by that time they're already estranged, as we'll see. But that's a whole other thing. I feel like this movie is trying to do a lot, and that's where I think it really fails, is because it tries to do too much. Because it's juggling like 5 different balls at once, with bringing back Spectre, with introducing Blofeld, who's not really Blofeld, but he is, blah, blah, blah. And then bringing in Madeline, bringing back Mr. White, having this power struggle with I think C is C and then M. It's just there's a lot that they're trying to do, and I feel like they could have cut some. And then you can't forget Mr. Hinks, Dave Bautista, who's great as like a callback to Robert Shaw.
Yeah, Robert
in,
Shaw, the whole train fight, I
yeah,
loved. I
that was
loved
great.
it.
It's very
so
much
cool.
kind of like very big homage to From Russia with Love.
Yeah.
Which I think was very well done. And visually, Sam Mendes knows how to tell a really good story. And from a directing standpoint, no complaints from either of his films. I think from a screenwriting perspective, I think they just tried to do a little more than they should have done. By maybe they should have, I don't know, probably they should have introduced Spectre in this one, teased Blofeld, waited until the next one or something like that, because I feel like they stuffed too much in this. And for me,
I don't disagree, but I still overall, I enjoyed this.
You like it? Oh, I enjoy it too. As I said, like even the beginning, that one shot take of Bond, kind of like with this cut, they cut like 3 or 4 times. Or like if you look, you'll see. But in theory, the one take as he is going to kill Marco Sciarra, I believe is his name. Like Sciarra, whatever. Great, just cool. It is a visually fantastic and engrossing, and in comparison, a really big contrast to Quantum of Solace, where it's cut, to where it's like nope, one long take.
Yeah, it's again for a Bond movie that I just consistently hear bad things about. Again, I don't think I've seen this movie since it came out. Which I didn't see this in the theaters. I missed it, and I had to wait until it was available for rent. And I thought it was okay. But for a movie that I've just consistently heard it sucks, I'm just like, I like that shit a lot.
And I think that is the problem of too much expectation. If you go in thinking you're gonna really, really like it, you're gonna get something like that. Like, oh wow, it's like, this is better than I thought. But if it's something really, really low, if you have high expectation for something and it's lower, it's like, oh, well, that's kind of disappointing. But if it's the reverse, you get something like you have with your reaction to Spectre. I really enjoy that. I think his bass is kind of like this is the first bass that I think we've gotten in a while in the Craig era films. It's very classic James Bondian, where it's out in the middle of nowhere. It's really elaborate, and this is the most out of all of them, the most ones that harkens back in my mind to prior Bond films. You can tell Sam Mendes was a fan of the prior Bond movies,
and I appreciate that.
I know you do, and I appreciate that too.
As a fan of Connery's era, I appreciate the to me not cheap callbacks.
No,
the fight on the train is it's 100% a callback to From Russia with Love, but it doesn't feel cheap. It doesn't feel like we're doing this because, hey, look, previous James Bond movies. It's more just like, oh, we have an opportunity to have a fight on the train. And again, even then, I like throwing Madeline into that and having her take an
Yeah.
active role in that fight. Like,
Yeah, she does. She doesn't just sit there. And I think we're past that now. Just kind of like we don't really want the quote unquote Bond girl to just kind of sit around and be like, oh dear, oh no, I don't know what I'm
yeah,
doing. Because that's not interesting to watch. It's sexist and it's kind of interesting. I mean, it's uninteresting, excuse me. And I think
yeah.
that Madeline, it follows that good history of like,
Look,
oh hey, we want someone
yeah,
to really
we
kind of like
talked about
fall
this
for
when
Bond.
we did George Lazenby. One of the reasons why I
Yeah,
love Tracy so much is she is such an active
ahead of her time.
character. Oh yeah, Madeline, Vesper, like they're all taking their cues from her. Like,
Right.
let's have the active Bond girl that has a true romance with Bond. Like the lines are connected. Speaking of connected lines,
Wait, we didn't talk about this for Skyfall.
what
And we didn't talk about it for Spectre either.
what?
The song.
Oh, let's talk about Skyfall.
Let's talk about Skyfall. What a great song.
So
What
it's
a
not.
phenomenal song.
So I've always ranked it my number two. Personally,
Right?
License to Kill is an earworm that I just adore. But
Sure.
in the same way that I consider, well, maybe we'll see at the end. I think Skyfall is the best Bond theme we've gotten so far. I think Adele.
Wow.
It is. You know what it is? It's like the movie. It is classic and updated. It feels in line with Goldfinger while also being updated. You know, like
I like that.
It's, you definitely
It's
it won an Oscar,
and
deservedly so, and
yeah,
it's fantastic.
and it's
Writing
also
on the
visual.
wall. I think the problem is it always just feels like it's gonna build up to a big crescendo and and it never does. It's kind of just like keeps doing this, and, but then never goes boom. It just kind of like it's okay.
Yeah, no, Writing on the Wall I think is fine, didn't deserve the win of the Oscar, but I think regardless, I think it's kind of one that's kind of very middling.
It won the
When
Oscar.
it won the Oscar.
Jeez, I
Yeah.
gotta see what that was up against. What
I
this
don't
movie was
it,
2015.
it was 2015, man.
All right,
And it did not
I gotta
deserve
see. I gotta
oh.
see 2016 Oscars. I gotta keep talk about the song because I gotta
Yeah,
see what
no, but first
won.
off, Skyfall I think is truly an amazing like piece of music because it does have the classic. It's very classic. It's not like, but it's not also of its time. Like it takes a lot of the classical orchestrations of like Bond and kind of brings it to the 21st century. And Adele's voice is kind of perfect, I think, for the James Bond world. Spectre, on the other hand, or excuse me, Writings on the Wall for Spectre is not the same. Visually, I like the opening sequence and how it plays into the idea of Spectre. That's cool.
Hmm.
In the
Uh,
in the contrast, Skyfall has both an amazing visual sequence as he's being sucked into the hole, and then the other
so,
way around too
talking
when it
about,
comes to just the music. Go
I
ahead.
gotta be honest. I don't know any of the other songs that it was up against that
Baby.
year. So I don't know if it was deserved or not. But
I'll look at it and give you my best guess. Anyway, first off, while we're talking, we're going into the next and final one in this quad. Wait, what do you call this? A five elegy? I don't know.
I've literally never, because yeah, quadrilogy is
Quadrilogy is four. What is five?
anthology.
No, that anthology is different because that's a whole bunch of other ones. Anyway, No Time to Die.
Yeah.
Right here. That one.
Yeah.
So while I'm looking at what this music in, tell me, Matt, you like this one, but it's something it does is not you're not a big fan of by the
You
time
know
we get to
what?
the third act.
Let's just get it out of the way. Spoilers for this movie that is a year
Right.
old. You haven't seen it. Don't listen here. So there's this concept in film watching, which is sometimes the ending of a movie. The ending of the movie affects the movie. And sometimes
Right.
what they do can affect how you look at the whole movie. This is not one of those cases. However, I have to say, just as a Bond fan, James Bond doesn't die. Like, James Bond is the guy who the bombs at 2 seconds and he clips the right wire. Like, he doesn't die. And unfortunately that whole ending for me ruins what was a really good Bond movie. It not ruined. I don't want to say ruined, but
Brings
I
it down.
fought it when I saw it in theaters, and I felt it rewatching it this time. It's just like, God, I wish. I can't say I love it. I think it's good,
Yeah.
but that ending, I'm sorry, and I know that you can get, but again, James Bond doesn't die. That he just doesn't. Regardless of that, I've gotten that out of the way. I think it's a good movie. There are a lot of good elements about it. I think visually it's fantastic. Billie Eilish's song I think is great.
Great.
That one definitely deserved to win the Oscar. I like I like the new 007 and I like that whole thing.
That's fun.
Ana de Armas's cameo, I guess you would call it,
Yeah, that's a cameo.
is spectacular, and it's unfortunate that she was introduced in this one, which means we're probably never going to see this character again.
Not
I know
necessarily.
it's spin-off, but hey, you know what?
No, not a spin-off.
Almost,
I was gonna say M. I don't listen. Judi Dench was M from 2 different Bonds.
True.
She could come back
you know
out
what?
of nowhere.
You're right. You right.
Thank you. I paid attention.
Well, no, because I do remember last year hearing that they were like, oh, maybe we'll spin off this character. Felix is great. I like that.
So good.
I like how it feels like a movie that does take place. Like, again, the relationship between Felix and Bond. There's definitely adventures, which is always James Bond. There's adventures that we just never saw.
Of course.
Because their friendship can't be from Casino Royale.
And I
like that.
No, this is more than just the movies we've seen with him in the past. Because he wasn't an inspector, nor was he in Skyfall, to my knowledge. He was only in the other 2.
Yeah,
and he's there, but I think this is where we kind of get the little winks and nudges. And overall, I think No Time to Die, ending aside from we may disagree upon that, this is a love letter to who Bond is to a current generation, the Daniel Craig era in particular, which I kind of wish that I wish that a lot of the different Bonds had a movie like this, death aside, to go out on in a love letter that I feel like is like, okay, we're bringing in all these
definitive ending.
Yes, correct.
No, I
and
do
not
agree.
Like a poor Dalton.
But I still like the nods. Like the fact that calling him Commander, like, that's great. Like, even though, like, because how many people watching Daniel Craig movies know that Bond's a commander in the Royal Navy? Not many. So I like that he's like, I'm not a 00, but I'm still a commander. So give me the respect. Visually, I think the movie's, again, I said that already. Yeah, I don't want to say, and that's why I wanted to make it certain that the ending didn't kill this movie. This isn't one of those endings to where it's like, well, now I can never watch that movie again because I know it ends like shit.
Yeah.
And now the whole movie just seems pointless. It's just not my preferred cup of tea. But I thought it's a, you know what? It's a good ride, and I think it's a good swan song for Daniel
Swan
Craig.
song?
I don't get what was
Swan.
Oh, Madeline
Swan. Dr. Madeline Swan. Yeah, Swan song. Anyway, no, what I was going to say is that, what are your thoughts on James Bond? Because we get more on Madeline in this one, which I appreciate. She plays a lot more integral of not that she did an inspector, but in this one, I feel like she has more of an integral role to the overarching story, obviously, because she is Bond's. She's the love interest. She is him getting over Vesper. So, and I love that opening scene, that entire opening sequence, the longest one I think we've had in a while. Spectacular.
Yeah.
It could have been a short film in my mind. Truly.
Yeah, it's great.
He could have he's him letting go of Vesper and then him ultimately going in the past, coming back to haunt him. Because this is a movie about the past. and the past coming back to haunt you when you want to move to the future.
And how it's unfortunately your past will come back, and it's how you choose to respond to it. You can either cower and hide, or you can go full force. And I like how Madeline kind of tries to cower and hide from hers, whereas Bond doesn't. Even with Blofeld, we know from the previous movie that there's a connection between those two.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just a good movie. Like it's good ending aside for me. I totally get that. Look, I know everyone likes to forget this, but let's not forget. I forget what movie he was doing press for, but someone asked Daniel Craig after Spectre if he would ever come back to do James Bond, and he said, and I quote, "I would rather slash my hoops." He said that. I know that no one likes to talk about that now that this movie exists, so they definitely let him have a little bit more input on the story, and I feel like he was like, I'm being killed off so that I can never be brought back again for this.
Excuse me. Yeah, he's like, please end it for me. I don't want to do this again.
He pulled Harrison Ford in Force Awakens story. He's like, I'll do it, but you're killing me so I can never come back. And yeah, I know. But literally, the reason why he did that is out of respect for his friend Carrie Fisher. If Carrie was alive, Harrison wouldn't have shown up in Rise of Skywalker. That's what I believe, despite the fact that I love that scene in Rise of Skywalker.
I agree.
That's why, is because he was like, all right, for Carrie, I'll do it. Yeah, it's a really good movie. Like I said, there are elements that I hope, like I said, on De Armas. I know it's a silly thing to focus on, but she was such a breath of fresh air.
Fun bright spot.
In this series. Yeah, she's a fun bright spot. She is to compare Bond in Casino Royale when he's like new fresh 007 to her new fresh CIA operative. It's like him, he was all like girl going through walls being like to where she's like, oops, this is kind of fun. This is pretty cool.
He's like,
dude, Felix, though, his death, man, like
that was crushing. Which
it's not just the getting shot, it's the getting shot, and kind of like Vesper, it's you have to let me die. You gotta let me die. And
I think
for Bond, think about that's rough, you know?
Because Bond has lost Vesper, he's lost M, he's lost now Felix, and it's he
feels like he's lost Madeline, because he thinks she's working with Spectre, like that was the whole thing, you know, and yeah, it sucks, you know, and it's rough, you know, the whole thing of he finds out he has this family and he's able to really truly reconnect with Madeline, only for the lackluster villain of this movie to take that up. Look, Rami Malek is a great actor.
Yes,
I've seen the Night at the Museum movies. I know this. I like to remind everybody that's the first place I know him from. He was King Tut in Night at the Museum 1, 2, and 3. Also he played Freddie Mercury, and he's incredible in that movie.
Yeah, he's still better at Night at the Museum in my mind. So,
oh, really?
Hot take. Yeah, hot take.
Whatever. I don't care. But he's not really that good in this movie. Like,
no, I think in his mind he was going for the very classic Bond villains, where he's like the really mustache twirling, like the accent and all this stuff.
But Dr. No was great, man. Yeah, he's just not, you know. It's fine. But
I also think his villain too, especially when you have a movie that's as long as this, his villain feels so kind of weak. You could have easily brought back Blofeld, who kind of really dies unceremoniously in my view.
Yeah, I think that was to be.
It was in service. It was, and I don't like deaths that are just shocking.
It's taking the James Bond villain and killing him off really quickly.
I don't like that.
You know, it would have been cool if Blofeld was the one behind all this. Yeah, I would have really to reference another movie that I revisited this year again. very long time. Silence of the Lambs, like kind of would have liked, kind of like how Hannibal Lecter was feeding information to Buffalo Bill when he was in jail. Like, what if he was doing all this stuff behind bars and Bond realizes that at the end? Like, would have been cool, but they didn't want to go that route. All right. But overall, it's a solid enough entry to the series for right now. I think it's a good cap to Daniel Craig's era, and it's an interesting movie. Obviously, once the next one comes, whenever that is, but for now, obviously, doing what we did, it was interesting to end the movie and to be like, wow, that's it, because the whole movie is about sort of finality and kind of moving on, and
it is about killing the past and going toward the future. And I think the representation of Bond having a kid, because I don't think we've ever had that. From watching all these, we've never had that. The closest we've ever got is Tracy. Like that's it.
Yeah, but that wasn't
actually
even
had
a kid.
someone.
I mean, I said,
some sort of like
he had a family.
Familial.
Like he had a family, and look, I'm a human being. For as much as I hate the ending because James Bond does that, yeah, I'm like, man, that really sucks. And the beautiful, she has your eyes. Yes, I know. Which is again, maybe that's just my inferring, but that whole thing is that whenever Madeline looks at her daughter, she will always see his eyes. He'll always still be with her. And even Q, like I love that whole thing of him, even the realization to where he's like, oh, fuck, no, there's nothing. What can I do? Is there something, and even 007, like she, even for all the cattiness her and Bond had throughout the movie, there's a respect she has, which we see when she says, give him 007 back. Like there's a respect that I like between those two characters. That does feel real. Like I like how she's the new 00 and he's this old guy, and so she's kind of just like, hey, new class is coming. And I like how Moneypenny is kind of like again, that whole scene when they're with M, and it's just like, no, just Bond. I like how Moneypenny's like, you're not 007, he's 007. Like I like all of that. And again, the actress name is escaping me who plays the new 007. Just because I suck at doing this. What's her name? Google, help me.
Wait, who are you talking about again?
I'll find it. Cast, and it is Latasha Lynch. That's what I thought.
Oh, yes, Lashana Lynch. Lashana Lynch.
Lashana Lynch. I'm sorry, yes. I apologize, Miss Lynch. She's great, and I like how she isn't like how sometimes, like how Supergirl sometimes is just, it's Superman. What if we made her a girl? Because we're feminists. Yeah. You go, girl. This just felt like she's a badass in her own right, and I like that. And I like how she tries to put Bond in his place because she feels she's the new generation of 00s. Bond is this old guy from the past, and then I like that, and it doesn't feel forced. It feels genuinely real that, like, yeah, someone would feel like this. Like, why are we going back to this old? He retired years ago. Why are you going back to him? You have me. There's a despite the fact that she's female, let's be honest, there's a dick measuring contest between the two of them throughout the film. Like,
there is. It's really satisfying. Even in the end when they're working together and I'm cheering like, yeah, this is great. They're still kind of like,
it's not really until near the end, where she respects, and there's that mutual respect of, he's like, I'm trusting you with my family, and her giving him the detonator to where, she's like, this might be useful. I think it's a good final film for Craig.
I do think so too. And disagreement on the ending, because I love the finality personally. Because again, I don't have that same connection to Bond like you do. Because at the end of the day, I do love Bond, but I don't have that connection that I've had as long. And I'm not saying you're gatekeeping. I never ever want to
Yeah.
ever say that. But the connection is stronger with you. So I respect and understand why, because
Yeah.
I'm sure there's some character, if I thought long and hard enough about it, if they killed them, I'm like, no, don't do that, please. It
Yeah.
hurts. It would hurt. And it'd be like, why would you do something like
Well,
this? But
yeah,
for
Jesus, look
me,
at,
for Bond, go ahead.
you know, Chris Nolan couldn't even really truly kill off Batman because he's like, Batman doesn't die.
Hey,
We can fake it, but he don't really
yes.
die.
And they could not fake this one because that's a big missile.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sadly not. But it's okay because we're getting a new
Maybe.
Bond. I don't know who that's gonna be, but we'll see, you know?
Yeah.
If
this was a couple years ago, man, Michael Fassbender.
Maybe.
Dude, ever since I saw X-Men First Class, the scene when he goes into the bar with the Nazis, I'm like, that guy should be James Bond. Because that is like an updated Connery moment. Obviously, take place in the 60s, so of course my mind's there, but I'm just like, but obviously Michael Fassbender is way too old at this point.
They want someone who's in their 30s.
Yeah.
So, which is a good age.
No, it is. I mean, Pierce Brosnan was like 42 when he was in GoldenEye. So
which is wild to me. He does not look 42.
Dude, how old is he now? Because he doesn't look that old now. He's aged.
70-something?
Yeah, dude, man, Pierce. Like, let's be honest here. That's a man.
Yeah. No, I agree.
It's not Black Adam. I was still like, God damn, you're okay. Let's get to the rankings.
Yes, let's get to the rankings
now.
over
Pierce Brosnan.
That's literally what this is going to be. Just a nice fanboy nature.
Yeah.
So we're going to rank how we view all of these films. It's easy. Yes, the Daniel Craig films.
Number 5.
Number 5. This is relatively easy, and I think we all agree, and we can say it together.
Mm-hmm.
Quantum of Solace. It's this one right here. So bad. I wonder what would happen if the writer's strike didn't happen. Would it have been better, or would it already suffered from already just kind of the hands that were already at play? That's what
I gotta be honest with you. I have absolutely no idea.
Honestly,
I don't know. Because writer strikes. Because there's always a lead up to them. So I don't know, man. Regardless,
I know, man. I don't know either. It's okay.
The movie sucks regardless. You can't live in the world where it was good. So my number 4 is not your number 4. I know that for certain. My number 4 is Casino Royale. Not because it is a bad movie. I think it's a fine entry, but I just think the 3 I have above it are superior.
Understandable. Okay, so my 4, Okay, so actually, fun fact, it's kind of like 5, 3 of them, and then number 1. Okay. I think we're in agreement about that. This is one that I actually really do enjoy a lot, but I feel like it gets lost in and of itself, as I mentioned before. And number 4 is Spectre.
I'm not shocked. I thought that's what it was
predictable.
Now your number 2 and 3. That was where I'm like, I'm interested.
So this is where, because Spectre, I feel like is, as I mentioned, it's just, I feel like there's a great movie.
There's too much in it. Yeah.
There's too much, and it's a brain overload in my mind.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my number 4, Spectre. What's your 3?
My number 3 is No Time to Die. Which my 2 and 3 were shifting around. And ultimately, and what I'll say for this series, and when I release my rankings of all of them, sometimes it comes down to rewatchability. And I just said after, this is a good movie, but and I think I used this analogy, I actually did use this analogy talking about Sean Connery when I talked about why I put Diamonds Are Forever over Thunderball, which I was like, if they're both on TV at the same time, which one am I putting on? I'm putting on Spectre, which is my number 2. Again, No Time to Die, I think it's great. Again, the ending, it makes it rough for me. But fair. Spectre, I also really did like. I liked the updated throwback to the Connery stuff. I thought that was great. Yeah. So, what are your number 3 and 2?
My number 3 is Casino Royale.
Okay.
Now, I really, as I said, I do enjoy Casino Royale, but I do feel like it's weighed down by its own desire to be a quote unquote gritty reboot
Yeah.
of it. Because I do agree with you that I think it's really good and I love the emotion they now bring to
Mhm.
Bond.
But
But
it's
I
just
feel
done
like,
so much better in the latter three movies. And
yes,
again, that is not its fault. That is all stuff in retrospective. Like you can't
yes,
know that. Um, it's impossible to. I mean, unless they mapped out this entire series, which happens. They map out things. Look at the
mapping
MCU.
out. Well, that's
Mm,
all we can look at.
but yeah. So I don't. I'm surprised. I actually thought that was going to be your number two. I'm not going to lie.
Well, then you know what number two is, but what's your number two? I think I know what your
I
number two
already
is.
said my number two was Spectre.
Okay, I wanted to make sure you
Yeah,
officially
yeah,
said
yeah.
that.
My number
Perfect.
two was Spectre. Yeah.
My number two is No Time to Die.
Yeah.
I just love this is probably my favorite use of. Well, I think that the visual standpoint of Skyfall is better. There's so much great action in No Time to Die that
Yep.
is to me some of the best. And if you also take into effect some of the great emotion and the question at the heart of the story about Bond being a family man, because it's a different dynamic. We've never
Mhm.
had that dynamic before, and I respect and appreciate that immensely personally. So
Yeah.
I'm totally down for what they did there, even if it was a really lackluster villain and kind of
Yeah.
some weird choices that we had when it comes to storytelling. But outside of all that, the core story of what Bond, who he is, I loved it. I absolutely
Yeah.
love No Time to Die. Plus, I saw it in IMAX in theaters, and it's just still sits great. When
I
I
saw it
still,
in Dolby, which is my preferred way to watch movies now,
hey,
and yeah, it was fantastic.
so good.
Yeah. But talk about so good. Our
Yes.
number one.
So
Yeah.
I think we both know. We
Yeah.
obviously, because by default,
Yeah.
it is.
Skyfall.
Let the sky fall when it
Crumble.
crumbles. Yes. Well, what
Sorry.
was that, Matt? What was that? You're
I'm
standing
just
tall?
continuing to sing the song.
Okay. Yes. This is a by far the number one for us both, based solely upon the fact that man, this is just such a great movie. Like this is a great movie on its own. It's a great James Bond movie on its own, and
And that
together they are great.
Yes, that is it. It is a great entry into the series, but standalone, it's just a good movie. Visually, action
Mhm.
wise, music wise, the score
Characters.
as well. Not just the Bond theme.
Yeah, score is great.
Yeah,
Wait, who did the score?
you
Thomas
know what?
Newman?
When you get a series with as many entries as this, it's cool that 50 years on, when this came out, they could still
Yeah.
surprise fans. And like I said, I think this movie serviced both fan bases very well. I think it serviced the fans that came in because of Casino Royale, while also
Mhm.
servicing the fans who had loved Bond since Doctor No. I think it was the best melding of the two.
Right.
Um, and it just led to a spectacular movie. We sang our praises about it quite a bit
Mhm.
in this video series.
Now,
Yeah.
what I will also quickly add is that I just found this out because I was looking. Stuart Baird, I'm not sure who edited Skyfall,
Mhm.
edited Superman, the first one.
Really,
Fun
with
fact.
Chris Reeve, one of my favorite films of all
Yes.
time. Interesting.
So, fun fact of the day, I was curious at who edited Skyfall because I wanted to give them a shout out because we just love Skyfall so much. And good
Yeah.
job on you, Stuart and Kate Bard. I don't know, but good job. You and Deacons did a great visualization together along with Mendez. So you win. Congratulations. Your crown. Take it.
Yes, you probably won't see this video, but
No, you won't. But if the off chance you do,
you got
there
it.
you
Good
go.
work.
You dropped this king, as they say.
Um,
um,
yeah.
I think you know what we should do, Matt. Hold on. See, notice me.
So,
Notice me. I'm trying to get my camera to sync. There we go.
well,
No, I was gonna say, you know what we should do? We should have one more episode where we come back and rank all of the Bond films
you
and
want to
talk
do
about
it?
our ranking. Let's do a finale one because why not? I feel like out of anything, that would get the best traction because who doesn't love good ranking?
Yeah, I guess.
Let's have a good finale.
But before we do that, which we
Yes.
will come back and this will spoil that video, but we weren't playing it. But I want to do this because 7 months ago, when me and Manning started this,
Yes.
In our Connery episode, before we even talked about Dr. No, I asked you 2 questions.
Hmm.
And I'm going to ask those questions now that you, Manning, have seen all 25 Bond films.
Oh
These 2
my.
questions. What is your favorite Bond film, and who is your favorite Bond actor?
Okay. Surprisingly, these will be different
Okay.
because they are not the same.
As when we started, okay?
Yes. I still think Skyfall is my favorite.
Okay.
Only because as a film, I think it is superior. And as a Bond film, as I mentioned, it does both so well. My notes are so small, I
Mhm.
don't know what I could have. However, I truly think that Timothy Dalton might be my favorite Bond. Like Craig is probably my number 2, but
The good
Timothy
word of Dalton.
Dal-
I have done my
Dalton,
job.
you have done your job. I think Dalton needed. I think I would have one more would have been at least ideal to have him because I feel like he could have offered so much to that role than what he was really given. And what we have, I had a taste, and I'm like, this is Bond. Why can't we have more? And it's kind of sad, honestly.
Yeah. So for me, unfortunately, my answers have not changed.
Oh,
GoldenEye is still my favorite, and Pierce Brosnan is still my favorite. But what's interesting, I was thinking about this today because I knew we were doing this, and I knew that my answers hadn't changed. And
mhm.
but it sometimes happens when you have series like this and you have your favorites. Sometimes there can be this sense of, am I just saying this just because it's been my answer for so long? But in particular, rewatching all of Pierce's movies reminded me why he is my favorite, because he has so much wit and charm like I want Bond to have, but he also gets those dark moments, the
Yeah.
moment of I'm just doing my job, so am I, and taking the tie and stabbing it. He's so good in all of his movies, and even in weaker entries, he still, to me, when I think of Bond, he's the guy that I think of walking in that gun barrel and shooting it. He has, and he was my first, but I think similar to in the same way Chris Reeves is still my favorite Superman. Both of them are the embodiment of everything I love about this character that I love. And GoldenEye is just it's again, it's this great mix of old and new. It was this updated Connery film with the best Bond villain to me, and just a spectacular entry. And
Mm.
yeah, and so yeah, unfortunately my answers haven't changed, but it has
Hey,
strengthened my reasonings behind them.
and if it hasn't changed for you, it hasn't
Yeah.
changed, and that's the beauty of it. Your list may change in 10 years.
Yep.
I know for me, my listings have completely gone all over the place after
My
seeing 4
listings have
movies.
changed too. I only ever had a top 10 list, and my top 10 list has shifted around a little bit. So
Oh, I'm excited to see where we land upon all this because now I'm curious as to where you are because I have my top 5. I don't think I have the rest of them.
yeah.
So we'll see about that.
Well,
And my
yeah.
5 is very eclectic, so I'm going to give myself a pat on the back.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't know when we're gonna do that video. Especially with the holiday coming up.
You're right. No, you know what? We have no rush. And you know why? Because this is not timely. And we're not really good with time because
Yeah,
Manning's busy and he's had to push things up. And it's all my fault, everybody. I take full
Matt's
responsibility.
as well busy, particularly in the coming month. But maybe January at
Let's
latest.
do it.
You know. But regardless, I want to thank everybody who has gone on this journey with us, who has watched the
Yes.
videos. I hope, like with Manning, that's the reason why I wanted to do this series with Manning in particular is because I knew he was someone who wasn't like me. He wasn't brought
Yes.
up on Bond. He was a new Bond fan who had never seen Timothy Dalton or all the more movies or all this, and that's why I felt like this would be a really fun series to celebrate the 60th anniversary of James Bond, which
Yes.
it's incredible watching all these movies and going, and we've said it from the beginning, what has kept Bond going is the fact that the writers and the actors and the directors are all willing to continually change. And maybe sometimes the format doesn't work for everybody, but it's cool that this series is so distinct because, like, my dad loves Roger Moore and I love Pierce Brosnan, and now Manning loves Dalton, but there's someone who Connery is their favorite, and there's definitely a few Lazenbys, and that is what, to me, I love about James Bond is there's so much similarities, but also enough differences that it makes talking about this series fun. So I thank you all for watching. If you haven't seen all of our videos, there's a playlist on the channel. Go watch it. And let us know what your favorites are, what your least favorites are, because it's totally okay to talk about stuff you don't like as long as you're not a dick about it. Yeah.
That. Absolutely that.
Yeah. I guess.
So, Matt, where can they find you?
You guys can find me on Twitter at Kearns_Matthew. You can find me on YouTube at MattMovie601, and right here as host of Second Look. A new episode will be dropping very soon, as I try to play the algorithm, on Willow, my favorite fantasy movie, because Disney Plus is something with it. But hey, who knows? Disney Plus doing that may get me more views. Yeah. You can also find me as the host of the Fan Podcast, which is on hiatus until the new year. And as co-host of Simple Tricks and Nonsense with Abe Flores when we decide to record another episode. And unfortunately, I don't get to say that we'll be back next month talking about the next Bond actor. Because there is no Bond actor.
Yet.
Until
we decide whenever that's announced.
Whenever that is. I have no clue.
I don't know. And you can find me at Twitter at Cinesco. And I'm tired. It's late. It's late. It is. It's only 10:35 p.m. But I'm tired. It was my cousin's wedding last night, and then came back from that. So I'm tired. You can find me at Twitter.
Watching.
No one's watching right now, and they'll watch later. We still have watchers. Hey, we have at least between 30 to 70 people watching some of these. So you know what? Hey, I'll take the view.
Yeah, did we dig deeper, random commenter?
I don't know. I thought we did. We kind of touched on some stuff.
I don't know.
Anyway, so you can find me at Twitter at Cine_Man. That's CINE_MANN. If Twitter, of course, is still around in the next little bit. I have no idea what's going on with that. I don't know what's going to happen with
Everybody's
Twitter.
Everybody's talking about dying, and yet no one has deleted their Twitter account. Shut up.
I'm not going to delete it until it actually dies.
What I'm saying. Be quiet, people.
Hey, listen. Anyway, you can find me Instagram at
all over again.
Well, you're not wrong. At Manning Franks, that's MANNING FRNKS on Instagram, and of course you can find me at WFY News too, where I do reviews usually weekly. That's what the plan is anyway. So, and you can find me, of course, here hopefully in January when we can get this next one off the ground, because I'm excited because that's ranking, and you know what? Less preparation because we just have to. We've already watched them. We just have to rank them.
So let's hit that video for the last time.
Maybe not the last time. We might do it one more time.
Manning, we never say never again, because diamonds are forever. Because this is a thunderball, and no, doctor, this is a Goldfinger. I don't know how to work in from Russia with love in that. Let's get out of here.
I'm just waiting to see how far you can go, and you have finally ended. So now I'm gonna hit the button.